to show you how to create these crafty coins. I've started calling them artist trading coins because they're really like an artist trading card, only in a circular form. So before we get started, let me show you these coins up close, and then I'll show you how to make them. I'll tell you a little bit about each of them. So this particular one was a magazine image, both the person and the flower, just a little bit of trim that I had laying on my desk, and a rub-on. This again was something that was around my desk. This is from Crowabout Studio, and in one of the collage sheets I will link the kit that I used. I think there was 2 kits that I used to make this, and really simple. You might already have these collage sheets if you've been following me for a while, and you've been doing the cheater collage and the collage series. This was the first one I made, and again another image from Crowabout Studio and just some bits and pieces, and I doodled around the edge. This was just a napkin, and I stamped on it, and that's all I did to it. On the back is another napkin, and I added a quote. Another collage sheet or images from a collage sheet from Crowabout Studio, and I took some of the alphabet and just put random letters in random directions. You'll see them here, a little bit there, and that's all I did to that. And on the back I did some doodling, just did a stripe around the outside, and then just wrote made by me, and then the date. Another magazine image, and this background was interesting. I didn't know it at the time, but it had the word art, and so I really emphasized that by highlighting it with a black pen. This just has plain paper on the back. This was a single image that came from Daphne's diary. I just cut it out and put the word artist right across there. More from Crowabout Studio images that I just had laying on my desk. This was an image from Pinterest, and I just cut it out, and I had a background and just glued it down. Nothing on the back of this yet. And then this one was a little bit different. I wanted to go a little quirky. And so what I did was I had an image this size that I got from Pinterest, and then I made it a little bit larger. And what I did was cut a 1-inch circle of her eye. So this eye is a little bit larger than that one. And I ended up bumping it up on a foam dot, as you can see there. And I made her eye just a little bit tilted, just to make her a little more quirky, and added some rub-ons. So it's really simple, they're fun to make, and they're very fast to make. And I think they'd be super fun to do for a trade, like artist trading cards. And believe it or not, that what we used for pocket letters, these fit perfectly in there. So they'd be great to go in a pocket letter if you wanted, or if you end up trading these, you've got a place to hold them, just what we used for pocket letters. Okay, so let's talk about what you're going to need to make these. And I am really sure you've got everything you need right in front of you. So these are 2.5 inches. You could make them any size. I just happen to like that size. So I used a 2.5-inch punch. If you don't have a punch and you have a die cut set, you could use any of the circles in here that you like. There's definitely a 2.5-inch one though, if you like that. If you don't have a die set, you can use a compass and just draw a circle any size that you feel is appropriate. And if you don't have that, you can use something around the house. A jar, this happens to be just perfect, 2.5 inches. A cup, anything. Just turn it over and trace it. So that takes care of the circle. The next thing you're going to need is something to put your circle on. So something heavy. This was the first one I made, and I used 1 sheet of 110-pound cardstock. And it's not too flimsy, really. It's pretty good. But I decided on my next one, which I think was this one, I used 2 circles of mixed media paper. It was 140 pounds. And that makes it super stiff, so that works out great. And then on some of these, I just used 2 sheets of the 2 circles of the 110-pound cardstock. So, you know, it's whatever you have around the house. If you don't have cardstock, then you can use a cereal box. You can use cardboard in a back of a notebook. You know, they have those cardboard pieces. You could use that. A file folder. If you have these tags that we all had from Julie Netting, these would be good. You could use, you know, the back of them. They're slick, so I'd probably sand them just a little bit so that you have some grip, but that would give you a stiffness also. So you probably have something around the house that you can use that's stiff enough for these. So that takes care of the material that you're going to put your paper on. Now, as far as paper, you can use scrapbook paper, magazines, junk mail, tissue paper, napkins, book pages, children's books, wrapping paper. There is anything, any amount of things, hundreds of things that you could use to put on here. And even if you don't have that, you can just paint it. Use some of your waste, you know, those sequin waste, any stencils you might have to do your background, and then your images you could get from magazines, download from Pinterest, again, wrapping paper, children's books, lots of different ways you can get images. And then as far as gluing everything down, I used a combination of glue stick and white glue. So when I put my 2 circles together, when I show you, I used white glue. On some of these I used glue stick and it worked fine as well. So you can use that. The deco page that I've been using, that's what I used as a top coat, but I used a glue stick to hold everything down. So I've given you the background of these, and I want to show you how to make them because they're super fun. So let's get started. So I've cut my circles out, and I'm going to just use a little bit of wet glue. It doesn't take much. Just go around the edge there. And the easiest way I found is to just press it down and then cup it in your hand and get the sides like that. And I just sort of press it down and let it sit for a minute. And while that's drying, one thing I want to tell you, when you're going to look for your images, you know we've talked about frames before. So this is where I cut my circles out of. So this is the 140-pound mixed media paper. And this is really useful to frame out your pictures. So I marked one here. If you didn't want to do a whole lot of, let me zoom in just a little bit. If you didn't want to do a whole lot of collaging, something like this would be great. And see how you can center that over it, and you can see exactly what it looks like. Now, when I first created, here's another one that you could use that would be fun. When I first did this, I actually collaged in a circle, and I can tell you that is not the way to go. So what I have found to be the easiest is to cut a 3-inch square, and that will allow you some room to move around and get the image that you want, but you're not so worried about that circle. So what I'm going to do is this is from Daphne's Diary. It's just a piece of regular magazine. And I found this image and I cut him out. So I'm just going to use a glue stick and put him down on that. And you just really want to be sure that you get plenty of glue on there and that you burnish him well, just like we're always doing. Okay, so I'm going to put him right about there. And I'm going to burnish it, and I think he needs something a little more, so I think I'm always going for black and white to add something to an image. So I'm going to go ahead and use this washi tape and just put a strip of it like right there. And I'm probably going to add just a little bit of glue on there so I make sure that stays down. And just lay that right along there. Okay, and I think that's about it for him. You could add some rub-ons if you wanted to. Now's the time to do it. If you can do it after, but it's easier if you do it now. And let's see. Maybe we'll add a rub-on here. And I think I'll just use, I've got these Tim Holtz ones. And I love using numbers. They don't have to mean anything. They can just be, let's use that 9. So I'm going to cut that out. Okay. And you would just stick it right. I think I'll put it right there. Let's see if I can make that. You know, there are better ways to do this than with your fingers. Okay. So there's that. I think that's good. And if you want to sort of check as you're going along and seeing, you know, if you like the way this is looking, pull out your little template and see, it's going to look kind of like that. I think I'm okay with that. Probably would have rather have put the 9 somewhere else, but it's good. I like things kind of coming off the edge anyway. Okay, so what I would do now is put a top coat. I found it's easier if you do it right now before you attach it to your piece. Just put a top coat of deco, you know, Mod Podge, decoupage, whatever. You can also just glue it down straight if you don't want to do this part or you don't have this, but it's nice because if you want to wax it and give it a really smooth finish, then you need to put this down so that your wax won't absorb into the paper. Okay, so I'm just going to let that dry, and then we'll cut this out. If you start to see that your page is warping, which you just did, don't worry about it. It will flatten down as it dries. So just let it dry well, and don't touch it, don't try and push it, you know, down, but just wait for it to dry and it'll get flat. So my piece is dry and I'm going to cut out the circle. Now with my punch, I find it works best if I have a piece of cardstock underneath it. For some reason it just cuts better. So what I'm going to do is turn this over and figure out exactly where I want this. And I think that looks about right. And then I'll slip in my cardstock behind it. Let me do it this way. Put my cardstock in first. And then I'm going to put this in. And I think that's about where I like it. So I'm just going to go ahead and... Okay. So he's ready to go. And I'm just going to use... Here's my circles that I put together earlier. And I'm just going to use glue, just a regular old glue stick, and I just particularly pay attention to the edges. So just go around on those. And I also put glue on this. That way I'm sure I've got good coverage and it will stick well. Okay? And just, again, I do this the same way. I put it on there as close as I can, and then you have some wiggle time and just get it in your hand and just make sure that's really down. Okay, and essentially this is done. You can add whatever you want on the back if you want to customize a message or just put paper over it. You can do that. But one thing I did want to tell you about, if you have either a sanding block like I use when I do my covers or a nail file, it's really helpful to pull this down over, and I'm sorry for the scratchy noise, I won't scratch, but you just pull that along the edges and it hardens the edges and they tend not to come up. So I always do that on my pieces. And then I'll probably give this guy a little sanding once everything is dry, and then apply the shoe polish like I did on my cover, and let that dry and buff it out, and he would really be done. It's very simple. You can go as elaborate or as or as simple as you'd like. As you can see, this one was super simple. It was just one piece that I cut out. So I think he's done. And one other one I was going to show you was I made this one for a friend who has a birthday coming up. I'm just going to stick it inside the card, write her a message on the back, and I just punched a hole and used some embroidery floss to hang it. She can just hang it, if she'd like, somewhere around her desk or wherever, just to remember her birthday. So my guy is done. As you can see, I added just a little strip here of words, and then I used a stencil and distress stain and went over it, added some depth of color. I used my color pencils and just sort of filled in his cheeks and his hat just to give him a little deeper color. And then I sanded it a bit and then waxed it. And the final step is to put distress stain around the edge for me. That's what I like to do. And I like the way he looks. I think he's ready to go and trade with somebody. And speaking of that, I wanted to show you what it looks like for artist trading cards. So these were what we used to use for pocket letters, and I have some background papers in here, but you can see how perfectly they fit in there. And I think it'd be a super way to keep them or share them. And I've got a couple other ideas that I'll share with you in future videos on how you can use these. I really am excited to see if you guys make these. Tell me which one you like the best. Is there one that you really thought, really stuck out at you? I'd love to hear that. So stay tuned now for a sneak peek of my journal. That will be the next video that's coming up. I'll do a flip of April. And that's it. So I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.